Hey, you, yeah, you, I need you to do something for me. Throw out what could or could not be the next millennia of your life. After all, you won't be needing it after you start learning how to code in Python. And no, I don't mean the vicious snake, I mean the vicious language of coding that will undoubtedly ruin your life. Welcome to a glorious guide on how to code the basics of Python. So, before I start, I'll tell you a little bit about Python. Python is a kind of code called a scripting language, along with JavaScript, Perl, PHP, VBScript, etc. And what makes these kinds of languages different compared to programming languages like Java is that instead of being compiled all into one thing before being ran, it's ran one command at a time. So the first thing you probably want to start with is learning how to print. And no, before you ask, I don't mean printing out papers and that kind of stuff. This kind of printing is numbers, letters, or possibly the amount of time you spent learning how to code in Python. So to start with, you can open up the terminal that allows you to type in your code, which looks different for everyone depending on what kind of computer you use. And so just to start things off, I'll show you what a basic print line looks like, which would be something like this. So basically, this print part right here, it's a command that tells the terminal what it's doing. So in this case, it's printing a line back to your monitor, and this can be used for things like debugging, uh, and pretty much just user interface and stuff. And then the next part is these quotation marks, which outline to the terminal what part you want to print. And this could really be anything, as long as you put it in correctly. And so when things go wrong is when you start missing things. So let's say I took out the quotation mark here. Basically, what would happen is it would print an error, which would look something like this. And so basically, it just says, hey, there's an error, has all this stuff. It says line 1, which lets you know what line it's on. And then it says this is a print line. And as you can see, I'm missing the quotation marks at the end. And so basically, it's just telling me, hey, you're missing this quotation mark, add it in so I can actually run this code and print out what you need. And so that's basically just how to print a basic line. And then the next thing is numbers, and this is coding basic math. And when I say basic, I mean like really, really basic stuff like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So it's kind of like how your calculator works, except you can add in a bunch of random stuff if you'd really like to. So a line of coding that uses numbers looks something like this. So once you run it, it'll print out just 6, because when you do coding like this, it uses order of operations when it does its calculations. So it means that really actually like half the work is kind of already done for you. So, like I said before, this is literally just used for adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing numbers again. So, yet again, the print part tells the terminal, print this. And here it doesn't use quotation marks because these are actual commands themselves. So, we have 3 plus 2 as a command, which says add these two together, then subtract 2, then add 17, then subtract 14. And this is its own kind of thing due to order of operations. And so that is pretty much just what a normal print line looks like for adding and subtracting. And now that I've talked about those two things, you can actually put them together. So you could add both the normal print and the numbers print together, and you'll get something that looks like this. So as you can see, you start out with the normal print line, which just says I will count the animals in the zoo. And then yet again you put print with the numbers before. So that's just a really easy way to put these two different commands together. And then the last thing that I like to talk about for this video is variables and naming. So variables are literally just names for numbers that help you know why that specific number is there. It's pretty useful for helping you not get lost in your own code. So if you want to define a variable, you put it at the beginning of your code so that the terminal knows what your variable is supposed to be for when you use it later on. And so when you want to define a variable, it would look something like this. And so this lets the terminal know that there are indeed 100 people waiting for something to actually happen because they don't have anything better to do with their lives. But actually, it just makes a variable called people, which is equal to 100. And so the terminal holds the variable for later use when you want to call back on it. And so when you do call back on it, you could use something like this. So this would print just there are 100 here today. And so basically what happens is you have your print with words, your variable followed after with more words. The reason you have this formatted like this is because Python needs to read it in a certain way, and if it isn't formatted like that, then you get an error back and you have to go and fix it. So that's just how that works. Now, if you wanted to use a multiple word variable, you'd have to add underscores after each word. So let's just say people you wanted it to be people here today. You'd put people here today, and it would print, but you'd also put that on the variable so that it would call back. And these are 3 basic things that you can code in Python. You're welcome.